fortunate to chair, that published the original document that pushed the government originally into the first modern-day slavery legislation, a matter of which I think they're very proud, and right, too, to make the UK the first country in the world to bring such legislation forward. That legislation now needs overhauling. That's been the case for some time. And the recent report, which it happens here, Fighting UK Slavery in the 2020s, states, and I quote, "For many, having no recourse to public funds poses further barriers to moving people on safely, putting victims at risk of homelessness and destitution and making it more likely they will fall back into exploitation and trafficking." The one thing we can learn from recent events is that places like Leicester, where there has been now uncovered the most appalling nature of abuse of individuals who themselves have been victims of slavery, working for a pittance and living in terrible accommodation, is something we don't really want to see repeated again in the UK. And I think this is the point that I want to make throughout this. So there needs to be some kind of recourse to confirm victims of modern slavery to public funds, which would make them more secure than it is at the moment. And I think that legislation needs to make that the case. And the EA nationals that we were just talking about just then, I'm pleased that the government has moved on this and recognised that there was some contradiction in what they were proposing in their guidance. And I noticed that there was a paragraph inserted into the guidance after Lord McColl's amendment had been passed, which, had it been there had it been rectified originally, might have meant that there would have been no need for this particular amendment. And there were two contradictions, and I haven't got time, Dame Anna, to go through them now, so they can read them at all. But I'm pleased that the government has, as the Minister has said at the dispatch box earlier, has now rectified that and said that the non-EEA and EEA nationals will actually be treated the same when it comes to DLR. And I think that is really important, a very good move, and I'm pleased that the government has done that. Having spoken to the Home Secretary and got that guarantee from her, it's a great pleasure to see it come at the dispatch box. But there's always been a problem with discretionary leave to remain, and made worse by a minister back in 2017 saying that there must be exceptional or compelling reasons to justify a grant. The bar has been set too high, and I think it's really important for us to recognise people coming from areas having suffered real persecution and slavery need to have a little more consideration about their position. They are not in the same boat as pure asylum seekers. In fact, people coming over here on that basis can get a much longer period of time, whereas somebody who has genuine problems where they have been simply abused finds their time curtailed. And this is why we need to look further than just what the government is doing here. I recognise that perhaps today this is not the right bill to try and press this forward, but I do say to the government that there is another way. And I recognise also that the problem on that score is that a confirmed refugee can get 5 years leave to remain, but a confirmed, and I say confirmed, victim of modern slavery gets no leave to remain at all. And it seems to me that we've got ourselves in a twisted position, not because the government wants to be there or any government wants to be there, but I think we've just got an anomaly. And I think we now need to deal with this by rectifying this. And this is the point that I really want to make, given the short period of time. I think it's expensive for someone to be taken through the national referral mechanism, conclude that they are a genuine victim of modern slavery, but not provide adequate care, remain very vulnerable and are quickly then re-trafficked. As I said earlier on, Leicester is a very good example of that, but there are other cities in the UK where people are drifting into these terrible conditions because they've got nowhere else to go, or, for that matter, going to the national referral mechanism, but ongoing care is so uncertain they don't have the capacity to give evidence in court against their traffickers, and that's the one thing we want them to do. If anything else, to prosecute these people to make sure they never do it again. So we need to think about this very carefully. So I have an ask of the government. The ask was, I intervened on him to say this. First of all, I want to say he needs to make sure that the change to the guidance is in, and in the other place, Lord McCall and others recognise critically that this has been done. It's not just a gesture. And number two, I would ask him seriously, and he did say that he was prepared to do this, but we need to bring this all together in a new bill. A new bill that deals with the problems that we now found from a very good bill, but now coming through, about the abuse of people who are confirmed as having been brought in under modern-day slavery conditions and give them the kind of support that's necessary. I recognise the government is worried about people using this as a route, but I say to them that the numbers coming in this are so tiny so tiny when they get a claim that we can surely manage this. This is not... I can understand failed immigration and people on asylum, but this is a very peculiar group that needs our care. If he can commit to that discussion with myself, Lord McCall and others in here who would wish to be part of that about future legislation, then we may need to make some progress on that. And I just want to end by saying this, Dame Eleanor. It is the mark of a civilized and decent society that when people have been tortured, when people have been persecuted and they flee to this country of all countries, that they get treated well. Why? Because that is who we are. Everybody, from Karl Marx through to Garibaldi, when they ran into difficulties and they were persecuted, they always came to the UK. Can we please today give ourselves a commitment that we will open our doors and welcome those people who are proved to be victims of modern-day slavery?
Stuart MacDonald.
Dame Eleanor, it's a pleasure to follow the right honourable gentleman who always speaks so expertly on issues of modern slavery. Madam Deputy Speaker, I think these Lord's Amendment asks